Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys doing? And welcome to the first of, inshallah, many podcasts with the Muslim Fathers Support Forum. And I'm joined with the legendary, the one and only Daniel Haqiqatjou, all the way from the United States of America. How are you doing?
You're
good?
good.
MashaAllah, it's good to see you. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. This is the first time you come to the UK. And unfortunately, I heard that they took you to Luton. How did you find it so far, the brothers and the...
MashaAllah, just as expected, beautiful brothers. Everyone is amazing, and MashaAllah, beautiful leaders as well here. So very happy.
And I've been told that when you've been walking in the street, people have recognized you. People are very happy to see you here. Tomorrow you're going to go to Birmingham, which is going to be on a completely different level. Inshallah. And we're going to be speaking about other things, inshallah, political things in other podcasts, because people will be thinking why are we not speaking about that now. But today we want to focus on some of the issues relating to Muslim fathers in the West. But obviously the name of the organization is Muslim Fathers Support Forum. So we want to kind of cover this ground because it's something which, unfortunately, because of the feminist movement, because of what we're seeing in the acquiescence of a lot of the Muslim leaders, the weakness in them, we're seeing that there isn't a strong stance taken on some of the key topics. Before I do that, I didn't introduce you, did I? But no, I saved the most important one, best for last. Go ahead. What's your name, brother?
Khalid Rasheed.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. And you've got some very unique experiences and anecdotes. You deal with these kinds of issues a lot, don't you? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I went through the family courts myself,
yes.
Seeking child custody. So I went through the system that the fathers we are now helping are going through. I've got about 9, almost 10 years of experience helping fathers. We help Muslim fathers just now, but before I used to help everyone. But the more I've done it, I just realised there's so many Muslim fathers that were seeking help.
Really?
And that's when we realised, you know what, there's an epidemic going on here.
Can I ask you about that? Like, so you deal in the UK context. So you say so many Muslim fathers. What are some of the main trends that some of the main cases that have come to you? What are some of the main problems that you've been dealing with?
Okay. The main problem that we deal with is obviously child access, withholding of child access. So the mother and father divorce, and then the mother will then withhold the access from the father.
Is that very common then, from your experience?
Like I said, it's an epidemic.
Really?
Not just in the Muslim community. Within our own community, absolutely is. But within the UK itself, I mean, 80% of divorce applications are initiated by women.
Here in the UK? According to whom is that number?
Office of National Statistics,
really, yeah?
And just imagine 80% of divorce are initiated by women, and how many of those are now withholding access? Some of the stats are, just like in 2022, there was 122,836.
Wow. I have to give you credit for this. Incredible memory there with that very, very specific number. Yeah.
It's unfortunate, it's such a big number. So there's over 120,000 family court applications going on at the moment. And the overall majority of those will be fathers seeking access to their children. And quite a chunk of those are our very own Muslim brothers. Unfortunately, it's the Muslim fathers that get it the worst in the family court. Yeah. Apart from the obvious false allegations of physical violence, emotional abuse, Muslim fathers then get tagged with the religious element of it, religious abuse, cultural abuse. So we get a much more of rough ride in court. And that's why we exist, Muslim Fathers Support Forum, because unfortunately, our own establishment, the Muslim hierarchy, are nowhere to be seen.
And what's your professional background, just for the...
So I've always been in business. I had a motor trade business for many years until my divorce, and it was a very successful business until my divorce happened. And then I fought for my own case, and that's where I really got into this about 10 years ago. Yeah.
Daniel, are these similar trends as what we're seeing in the United States of America?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge problem in the US as well for non-Muslims and Muslims. And you would think that the Muslim women would understand their rights in marriage and their responsibilities. They would have that religious knowledge and they would fear Allah when it comes to, just because you're in a marriage and maybe the feminist laws will say that you are entitled to half of your husband's property, that you fear Allah and that you're only going to be entitled to what Allah says that you're entitled to. You're not going to take what the this feminist system will grant you. You're not going to take custody of the children in this unjust way and prevent the father from actually seeing his own children.
Yes.
But it's non-existent. The level of either the women who, some of them very knowledgeable, maybe you can even call them an alima, is going into the family court system in the US.
Yes.
And she's extracting things that are not her haqq. She's depriving the father of custody or even visitation of his flesh and blood, causing untold amounts of trauma and distress, and basically ruining the lives of religious men. You know, this is not liberal Muslims who have no connection to deen. These are religious practicing. Unfortunately, that's the scandalous thing about it. So where there seems to be a knowledge gap in the US. So I don't know if that's been your experience yourself. Maybe you could
yeah, sure. I mean, I think everything that's been said here, I totally resonate with it. I feel like that has been. I mean, I've actually dealt with people. People have come crying in a very hard, mentally troubling time, asking, "What can I do with the situation?" They want to know their rights. They want to see their children. It actually enrages me. I'll be honest with you, bro. Like, it actually makes me so angry. Like, it's one of the worst things. And let's just put this on the table. It's min al-kabair, because this is qat' al-rahim. This is, when someone does this, they are doing some of the gravest sins in Islam. I mean, even the first couple of pages of the Quran condemns these actions. الَّذِينَ يَقَطَعُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَن يُوصَلَ وَيُفْسِدُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. The ones who break what Allah has ordered to be united, and that's qat' al-rahim, effectively. And the Prophet Muhammad said, he said that لَا يَدْخُلُ الْجَنَّةَ قَاطِعٌ, that someone who tries to cut the rahim, or the kinship, ties of kinship, will not enter Jannah. And there are so many hadiths. There's one very interesting hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was reprimanding and scolding at a type of people, the ones who cut between people who love each other. And imagine, for a woman to do this, and we will specify women, because from your experience here, you're saying that's the majority case. This is something which disproportionately affects women, no problem. So, and in the US, in the UK, for a woman to do this, it's actually not for her children. She's doing this for herself, because if it was for her children, she'll know, Daniel, that this is not in the best interest of her children. What do the studies that you've looked at show when there is an absence of a father figure in one's life?
Absence of father figure in one's life causes all kinds of problems, even according to secularism.
Yeah.
Like, even if we put the Islamic dimension of it to the side, increase in promiscuity is a big one.
Yeah.
You know, daughters that do not have a father presence in their life are more likely to engage in promiscuity, more likely to engage in zina, more likely to engage in immodest behavior. Boys also suffer from all kinds of psychological problems. This is documented. It's interesting because liberals will point to stats regarding single parent household, typically single mother. And there's all kinds of problems, like increase in drug addiction, increase in depression, increase in dropping from school, increase in falling into crime and being prosecuted for crimes. All of these dimensions are elevated when you don't have the father figure present in the lives of children, whether male or female. And it's funny because liberals cite these stats because they want to promote abortion. They say, hey, if we don't allow abortion and give the mother the right to, terminate the pregnancy, these children are going to be born out of wedlock to a single mother, and the society will suffer because of an increase in crime rate, dropout rate, drug use, etc. So they're pointing to these stats to promote abortion. Yes, but really it's the same stats for just single motherhood. Like you're cutting off the father figure, and your children are going to suffer. So some of these mothers, even if you tell them the stats, they have this emotional desire to take revenge or to somehow make their husbands suffer in this very unjust way.
Thank you for that. I think that's a very comprehensive and a very good analysis. But I was going to ask you now, since you're in the field as well, what do you think really about, let me ask this question, what do you think the main cause of this is? Why are women doing this? I mean, let's just say this, a caveat. Yeah, some men are doing it as well, of course. But we're saying here from the stats, from the anecdotes that we have and from the information that you have in this organization, you're saying it's majority women, first of all, aren't you? Yeah. And if so, why are they doing this? What's the main cause for this?
I think Brother Daniel just summed it up. Ultimately, revenge to hurt the partner.
Yeah.
The withholding of access, that is especially the main tool that they use. So they use the children as a weapon. Now, the thing is, they can do that to hurt the father, but what the sisters unfortunately don't realise is you're damaging the children, and a lot of the times beyond repair. There's a phenomenon called parental alienation. In the UK, I mean, you're probably very well aware of that in America, but in the UK, it's not so much, probably in the last 4 or 5 years, it's really taken on board. And already we're seeing now the feminist movement push back on that and try to somehow nullify that, and, but it exists. Mm-hmm. It's not a pseudoscience, so that's what they say. Sorry? So parental alienation summed up is where one parent will emotionally manipulate a child against the other parent. Yeah. And that causes long-term damage. It causes trauma. It causes, the stats, what you were just saying as well, fatherless families. 1 in 3 children in the UK are in family homes without a father in them. Sure. So that is a lot, Yes.
And one thing that we can ask Brother Muhammad is this epidemic of weak men who lack that kind of testicular fortitude. I think it has something to do with the fact that a lot of these men have been raised by single mothers. They haven't had the masculine figure in their life, the father or even grandfather, paternal line, to show them, what it means to be a man and how to really have that sense of himma or the sense of responsibility. Like, do you think that's a part of it?
It's a possibility. I myself was, to be honest, raised in a single mother household and all that kind of thing. Well, I'm, one of the rare exceptions. I'm only kidding. No, definitely, me growing up, I can tell you from my own experience that, it was a craving that I had, bro. Like, the father not being there. This was, I would never put this down to my mum. It wasn't her, decision at all. But just the pain, really, of not having a father there. The craving for a father figure, the wanting to see a role model, it's a treasure, or it's a gift that if you remove from a young man, I think it can cause all kinds of problems. For me, it did cause these problems, and it really does kind of like diminish and deprecate one's childhood. I agree. I think that if you don't have a male father, because the thing is, masculinity, if you like, is not something you can read in books and try. You need something like a physical role model. Yeah. That's what I personally think. So if you don't have that, it becomes an uphill struggle. It really does. And it might not be in the apparent. So it might not be in what you see in the person and how they conduct themselves, but maybe some kind of unconscious thing that happens, or some weird behavior or some anger that can develop from the person, or it could be these kinds of things. So to answer your question, I do think so. I think that if you remove the father figure from the child, that it will cause all kinds of pain for that child, and it will deprecate and diminish their childhood, and they'll have that craving that no woman can. Sorry to say, she cannot fill this gap. Just like no man can fill the mother's gap, and the mother's more important in Islam in many ways, not in general, but in many ways, than the father in many ways. Having said that, you need the father. And in fact, that book that was written by Warren Farrell, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name, Warren Farrell, the boy crisis, I think he showed, in one part of the book, the boy crisis, he was saying that actually on the stats that you were mentioning, they were lesser when it's a father single parent household. So when it's a mother single parent household, the delinquency and the crime problems and all that kind of stuff is actually more problematized than it is with the father. So removing this great advantage to a child's life it shows, to be honest, it shows extreme selfishness, not just selfishness. It shows the kind of selfishness that you would actually question, sorry to say this, the motherhood of that person. Yeah. Say, do you even deserve to have children? This is what you say. Do you question the motherhood? Why you have kids, but you want to remove their advantages? You want to scar them, you want to damage them, you want to deprecate, you want to hurt them.
Another aspect of it actually is when the mother has custody, there is more likelihood of molestation of the children. Because a father figure is more likely to protect his children from molestation. Whereas the woman, and we're talking about in general, so mostly non-Muslims, that's what the statistics are based on, that the mother will bring the boyfriend. The mother will be in, with other strange men.
Yeah.
And that increases the likelihood of molestation. And that increases, certain kind of deviant sexualities as well,
Really?
to put it diplomatically. So this is a huge societal problem. And unfortunately, now we're seeing more Muslims fall into this because of the court system that empowers women. So I think that's a big part of it that we should talk about.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that because I've see that happening. So before we predominantly helped Muslims, like I said, I was helping non-Muslims. And that one aspect of molestation was very common in non-Muslim cases. Oh yeah, almost every other court hearing I went to, there was allegations.
Well, so you were doing this for Muslims and non-Muslim communities.
Yes. Yeah. So initially, I used to help any father.
Yeah.
But like I said, the more I did it, and the more I realised Muslim fathers are at a disadvantage here, because you're going to the family court to a non-Muslim judge. They don't understand our religion. They don't understand, cultural practices, religious practices. Yet they are making decisions that affect our lives. So that's how I got into just helping Muslims solely.
Okay, so you're saying that the molestation cases are more with the...
Absolutely, yeah. But just exactly like you said, we are seeing those creep into now Muslim cases as well.
And it's when the dynamic is the way he described.
Yeah.
Just to ask you a question as a follow-up for that, because you've seen both the Muslim and non-Muslims cases, there isn't, I don't think, any specific data on this. I haven't come across it. So you're probably the best thing I can do in terms of asking, what things do you see are specific to the Muslim community that you don't see in the non-Muslim community, for example, in your dealing with people?
There are no statistics, obviously, to talk about. Going by my experience, the specific things in the Muslim community, and it's sad to say this, is the Muslim women tend to go for incentives. So they are the ideal lamb to the slaughter for the feminist movement, for women's aid, for example, to manipulate. There's so many horror stories. I mean, earlier on you were saying, these things get you angry. I sit in the court day in and day out every single week.
Really?
And we get depressed, some of the things that we hear and see.
Yeah. So what's specific to Muslim women that you don't, like you were saying, the weaponization of children? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I have one example.
No. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Like one specific thing I think that the Muslim women do is that they will, this is the sad thing, they'll appeal to Islam and they'll say that Islam has made my husband more of a misogynist because of teachings in Islam.
Really?
And my husband, recited these verses from Surah An-Nisa, Al-Rijalu Qawwamun 'ala An-Nisa. They have a patriarchy in Islam.
They do that?
Yeah, they'll cite things like, he's in favor of the concept of jihad. He's mentioned jihad at the dinner table. He's potentially a jihadi. He's potentially a terrorist.
So I think this is treachery. I think this is like nifaq.
No doubt. It reaches the level of nifaq and kufr. They'll cite hadith. They'll say, he doesn't really, he believes in minor marriage. This is a danger to my children. And it's the solicitor or the lawyer
honestly,
that's
a woman
coaching
like
them.
that, honestly, it's just horrible. I mean, to think that human beings like that even exist.
This is what we see. This is what we see every day in the family court.
You see this every day?
Every single day we see Muslim sisters coming and making these exact allegations.
Are you being serious, bro?
Yes, 100%.
Oh my God. This is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, they'll pick and choose aspects of
This is making
Islam.
me very upset, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is a serious matter, bro. How comes we don't know about this?
This is it. This is why we exist. This is why we're trying to raise awareness.
You must be really like you need a shrink or something. You need some kind of counselor to help you.
Sometimes we do, yeah. Sometimes honestly, I have to take off 3-4 days just to get over.
So is this
the injustice.
What we're saying here is that they're trying to leverage the system.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a direct question, right?
Yeah.
Are they doing it more or less than the average non-Muslim woman, in your experience?
Absolutely more, because
wow.
Well, look, we say this is a Christian country, but most people are not religious here. So the Muslim woman, she will use her religion in the family court to her advantage.
Also, the feminists, the non-religious feminists, they have an idea of equality. Like, okay, and the court system in terms of the actual separating the wealth, they will have a 50-50 split, but they punish men more because of custody, and the children will go over 95% or maybe 93%. Custody is granted to the mother. So that's the way that the system biases women.
Is that the USA?
I think that's in the UK as well.
Really?
Yeah. So the custody is
unbelievable, isn't it?
But the point is that when it comes to Muslim women, they have been fed this victim narrative.
Yes.
That they are oppressed by Muslim men. Muslim men are more tough, and the judges in the cases take that into account. Like, oh, he's a Muslim man, he's gonna be in favor of wife beating. He's gonna be in favor of this and that. So they really milk it even more, the Muslim women, because of this victim narrative and how Islam is patriarchal. So it's actually worse than if you had a secular woman,
unbelievable,
who is going to be even, in a certain sense, more even-handed.
Yes, it's like the chivalry effect on steroids.
Yeah,
with the Muslim woman. I have a theory, and it's a psychological theory to maybe underpin some of this. I'm not saying it as any matter of fact, but I feel like what's happening is there's a comparison happening with a lot of the Muslim women in our societies in the UK, in the US, Canada, and other places, where they're comparing their own lives with their non-Muslim equivalent, right? And they're thinking, well, these non-Muslim women can do careers and these kind of things and have lived this kind of equal life. And really what's happening is they have a pent-up resentment. And when the divorce happens, she feels like all these concepts of obedience and all this kind of things no longer apply to me. Therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm not only going to take my rights, but I'm going to compensate myself for all of the perceived subjugation that I had throughout the marriage. So because she was, let's say, had to be in a managerial hierarchy and the man was telling her a little bit of what to do and stuff like that. Although maybe in the US it's not as, maybe, I don't know, as strict in the UK or the dynamics there. But because she has that resentment, like, oh, I had to obey you, now I don't have to obey you, religiously or otherwise, I'm going to take my revenge effectively. The Israel policy.
Yeah. I'm so glad you've touched on that, because this is something now, if I name it something, it's coercive controlling behavior. That's what they now use in the family courts. So anything your husband asks you to do, oh, that's coercive controlling behavior. Yeah. So I think it was round about in 2015, they brought coercive controlling behavior as a definition of domestic abuse and violence.
Before I saw that, yeah.
Before that, it wasn't in there. The reason why they did that, because there was a push from the feminist movement, because the statistics showed that fathers were getting access to their children. You know, court cases were becoming successful for fathers, they were gaining access. So all of a sudden, there has to be something there now to stop the fathers getting access. So what happened then was they brought in the Domestic Abuse Act, coercive controlling behavior. Now, literally, it's such a vague and grey thing. Anything can be coercive controlling behavior. So like, you know, some of the examples you mentioned, working, you know, I've had women in family courts that have chosen not to work. They've chosen to be housewives, but in the family court, they're saying he prevented me from working. Yeah.
Oh.
Sisters who were full on niqabis before marriage.
Yeah.
They've then, you know, taken off the niqab, wearing a hijab.
Yeah.
But then they've, in the family court, are telling them that he forced me to wear hijab.
Or like traveling without a mahram, or I don't want you to go out at night after a certain time.
Okay, so let's be frank about this. Okay, because I think what we've done here is, I mean, if I continue hearing this, I'm going to get very upset. Because this kind of thing is just like, I consider it to be treachery to the Muslim community, to Islam, to Allah, His Messenger, to the man, to their own children. Like, that must be described as evil. That must be described as evil from the Islamic perspective and otherwise. Even a non-Muslim can see that. But we've spent a lot of time talking about the problems. Unless there's anything glaring that you want to bring to the table. But I think the main issues have maybe been covered, right? The main issues, weaponizing the children, what kind of tactics are used and stuff. Yeah. The question now is, what are the solutions? How does a man navigate this mess in the West, in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, wherever it may be? What do you guys propose? I'll start with you in the UK context, and maybe we'll talk about the US context and what joins the two.
So I'll talk about the Muslim family unit. We shouldn't have to rely on UK courts, man-made courts. We're Muslims.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have a system here in place the Islamic establishment, there is nothing. If you go to a Sharia council, the most they'll do is offer you counselling, mediation, and just a talaq subject, divorce.
Okay.
When it comes to child arrangements, they just wash their hands with it. You have to go to the family courts. So even if there are,
is that right?
Yes, even if there are sisters who are willing to, mediate, willing to negotiate, when it comes to child arrangement, because there's so many things attached to that, incentives, benefits, child maintenance. If our own Muslim community is not providing a service for them, they are then pushed to go down the route of the family courts. So
you're saying that we should have institutions in place which Muslims can legitimize and can be more trusted, more institutions, and there should be a culture of these are the places that we're going to take this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, if you go by the Sharia, then absolutely, look, all the answers are there. Unfortunately, our shayukh are not implementing them. There's nothing happening on the ground. Everyone talks a good game on this, but on the ground, realistically, nothing happens.
But just to be clear, the government has given these shuyukh the authority, like the arbitration councils do have the authority to grant custody, to create the division of wealth.
They don't. In the UK, they don't have it.
We don't, unfortunately.
Oh, I thought they did. Yeah. So
no,
in the US, they don't either. In the US, they don't either.
No, all they offer is effectively a fatwa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that they don't have the force of law.
Yeah,
so that means essentially that it's not enforceable. It's just on the basis of the fear of Allah that the woman has to actually go to the shuyukh and accept the fatwa that's given. But if she wants to say, she can get the fatwa and say, yeah, I don't care about this.
And they do that, bro. They do that.
So
I'm in contact with, let's say, some of the big ones in the UK, right?
Big ones.
Yeah, some of the big ones. And they say that like a lot of the cases they come, the sheikh, very well respected, he says these are the rulings, these are judgments. The woman literally says, I don't agree with you, even though she agreed for tahakum, which is a breach. Effectively, you agreed for arbitration from this sheikh, it didn't go your way, so you went for the next step. It shows you're disingenuous in the first place. You're an unauthentic human being. But let's go to the next step. He's right, because he's saying that this is not enforceable. A man should never depend on something like that. So what's the next step? Do you have anything that you...
I mean, effectively the only solution is to have khilafah and actual sovereignty. That is the only solution, really, because since Muslims do not have this kind of political sovereignty, even in the Muslim world, unfortunately, a lot of this feminist family law is being accepted. Like Pakistan, they had a bill that redefined domestic abuse to include things like controlling behavior, to include things like financial abuse. If the husband insists that, well, this is my bank account, this is my property, and he doesn't give access to his wife to that property, then that's considered financial abuse. She has a case against him in the court of law.
But I've got an idea that's just on this point, because I'm just thinking out loud here once again, and I've been thinking about this. Look, say someone starts a limited company, right? Yeah. And they employ their wife. Now, look, just for the sake of argument, in the UK you have something called PAYE, right? Pay as you earn. If you employ your wife and she's on the PAYE, you can tell her what to do. It's on the contract, and it's in the name of capitalism. It's not in the name of religion. No, do you see what I'm saying?
So not do like any kind of don't register your marriage with the state. But it's like an LLC.
So because it's not controlling behavior. Sorry, we have a legal contract. You've signed it. These are goods you're providing. I'm just receiving the goods. I'm paying you a monthly stipend.
Isn't it considered prostitution?
No, the sexual aspect is not included in this. Although
well, that's a big problem.
No, but
that's like the main thing.
It's one of the main things, but
that you want from your employee.
We're closing the circle of what's like how to protect. Well, effectively, we're just being straightforward and saying, how do you protect yourself as a man in these spaces? And I'm saying this might be one of the ways. Do you think this could be an alternative?
That needs to be explored.
It should be, yes.
There are other ideas. I mean, we're currently working with certain organizations, Islamic organizations. There is a solution to this in the interim for the short period. Khalifa, inshallah, one day. But for now,
what kind of solutions do you have?
To try to integrate the Sharia aspect with the UK family court system. Where the Sharia lacks, it can then be incorporated into the UK family system. I'll give you an example of that. So the biggest failure of what we see for Sharia courts is child arrangements. They just wash their hands with them, like I said earlier. So we're working on a pilot project at the moment with the Islamic Council of Europe. It's still in the planning stages at the moment, but inshallah, one day, a couple comes to the council, they want to part ways. Mediation hasn't worked, counselling hasn't worked. They will then discuss child arrangements. Unfortunately, in the country that we live in, Sharia doesn't, hold any precedent. They don't have any legal resource, so they have to go to the family court system. So what we are trying to do now is, working with Sharia councils, when it comes to child arrangements, we can hopefully draw up a consent order, so that's both parents agreeing, right, I'll have the children on this day, you can have them on this day. Drawing up a consent order, then going to the family courts and getting that rubber stamped by the family courts.
The consent order, would that be done before or after the separation has happened between?
So what we're hoping is that is one of the conditions. For example, if a sister is asking for khula, for example, so that is one of the conditions.
The only thing is, I'm playing devil's advocate, because someone can say, well, look, this is not going to be worth the paper it's written on, because what's going to happen is when you bring this to court, someone's going to say, he forced me to do this. He coerced me. He told me if I don't, he's going to hit me. And that's going to be the main argument.
Yeah. Obviously, it has to be evidenced. There has to be witnesses. And we see this actually all the time. We see this argument that you're saying. We see Muslim
You've
couples.
Seen that, of course.
Yeah. Not the child arrangements aspect of it, but agreements that have been made via counselling and mediation in using Sharia courts. Then the arguments gets used that no, it was all these men pressurizing me to say this, so it was under duress.
This is unbelievable. This is so unfair when you think about it.
Yeah.
But having said that, we still need to work it out, because we can't just throw the towel here.
Well, that's it. I mean, what other options do we have?
One of the issues, you know what you said there, just to kind of, I'm not sure if you ever come across this article, but I came across an article that said that in Germany, of all places, a woman was, attacked or hit or something like she was, and then the German judge, he didn't rule in her favor. And the reason why, he said, is because it's mentioned in your book. Have you come across this? It's an extraordinary article, which I can see, the negatives of that, by the way, because if it can really be used against who is this secular judge to be implementing religious law anyway, doesn't it? But the point is that that can happen. It can be messy. It can be messy if we try and do that. But going back to let's not hope for a change in legislation. Let's deal with what we have. Yeah. What else can we do? So I propose one thing. So for instance, an individual puts his wife on the PAYE. Yeah. And so he's got a clearly defined set of tasks that she has to look after. Let's say. Because the thing is, look, in this country you can have a maid. Yeah. You can have an administrator. You can have a masseuse. You can have a job role that has all this kind of thing. You can have someone who gets food. Why not?
It's not going to work, because
really?
You have this definition of a civil marriage, or what's common law marriage.
Okay.
So if you consider her your wife and you treat her like your wife, and Islamically, even if you have the aqd, right? You have to have the nikah. Yeah. So they will recognize that nikah, and they say that, well, you had a religious agreement, and so therefore it counts as a marriage. So you really can't get out of that.
Can you not have a marriage and at the same time have a business relationship with this person?
But they'll rule in terms of custody, in terms of the
custody thing
is on the basis of marriage as the court defines it. So all these loopholes, the feminists have lobbied. It's not like just 5-10 years. This is 50-60 years of feminist lobbying. All of these loopholes, unfortunately, have been closed. Really, because it's a feminist legal system, it's a feminist judicial system. They'll hold that even more against you. Like, oh, he's trying to get around the law.
Oh, I see.
In order to coerce and take advantage of his wife through establishing an LLC. It's actually going to be worse.
Really,
for you in that situation. Yeah. But the solution that obviously Khilafah is the solution, inshallah. But there are more immediate things that can be done in terms of educating the community on the rights and responsibilities of a wife and a husband. Because even the idea of obedience, ta'ah, a lot of Muslim women, even the ones who are religious, they are practicing the deen, they're going to the masjid, they're following shuyukh and watching their feel-good lectures. They've never heard of this concept of ta'ah and obedience.
Well, a lot of these lecturers actually omit it intentionally.
Yeah, they omit it intentionally. and this has been a disaster. It's been a disaster because if the judicial system, if the legal system, if the social fabric of feminism, all of this is encouraging women to divorce and take maximum resources, take custody. The last line of defense is fear of Allah, is the deen. And the woman who does fear Allah, she fears the hellfire. She will not be influenced by the entire world telling her to violate the deen. But that last line of defense, who has actually destroyed it? It's these compassionate imams, these simp imams, who are constantly promoting this kind of victim mentality.
Yes,
they're too scared to say one thing against women, tell women to fear Allah, tell women that, look at what this woman did in this court case. She is a munafiqah. She is doing khiyana. This is what needs to be said on the minbar, right?
Yeah, I agree.
They have these kinds of lectures against Muslim men. What about this kind of treachery? What about this kind of nifaq that we see? Shame culture. This is another thing. Women who do this need to be shamed. They need to be highlighted, and women respond to shame, right?
100%.
And if our communities are doing this,
these are really good, really excellent, I think, propositions here. I think.
Can I just say, this is just not controversial speaking. This is the reality on the ground. This is why, we keep on saying, as Muslim Father Support Forum, you said, what are the solutions? We're not even there yet. We're so at grassroots level at the moment. We need to raise awareness of these issues, first of all. I mean, for example, just myself, I didn't know family courts existed until my children were taken away.
Yes.
So, and that's the case right now. So first of all, we need to raise awareness. And who better than our own Muslim alims, our own Muslim institutions? There's so many famous sayings going around, like what you mentioned about, celebrity sheikhs and these kind of things. I won't mention names, my money is my money, your money is my money. The damage these kind of things have done in our society is unbelievable. And I see these sisters going on that, playing these things out in their lives, demanding money from their husbands, demanding, being forceful, and being...
Have you seen any cases, sorry to cut you off, have you seen any cases where the Muslim woman will actually cite one of these compassionate imams as an authority for gaining like these unlawful rights, like Islamically?
Really?
Wow.
All the time.
All the time. From the UK?
All the time. So in family courts, we see a lot of evidence. So a lot of these evidences are WhatsApp conversations. So you'll see these quotes being sent to the husband. You'll see, Islamic quotes. You'll see quotes from certain sheikhs, celebrity sheikhs, like we like to call them. To justify, you need to provide for me. You need to buy me this Gucci handbag. You need to buy me this.
Gucci handbag?
I've seen that in a message.
No, if a woman says that to me, I'll be very upset. So how can you ask that when I already got you the Versace?
Versace, there you go. It's wrong colour.
No, but having said that, I think we have been thinking about this in a bit of a Machiavellian way, because there are the positive things we can add as well, which are the following. Like, do you know, you were talking about alienation. You've got kids as well. Have you got kids?
Yes, I have.
You've got kids as well, right? So I think one of the most powerful things a man can do to leverage the situation is actually spend time with his children, as mundane as that might sound, because a child remembers when their parent is involved. So if you want somehow your child not to be the subject of alienation and brainwashed by the parents, but then you're a runaway father effectively, and you're deadbeat dad, you're not going to achieve your function. There's no way even if you're right about what you're saying, kids know that, okay, they've put my mother has put this much work into me, and my father has put this much work into me, and there's no comparison between the two. So I'm choosing my mother every day, even if she's wrong, because she's put. So what you have to do as a father is show love and show affection and show time and respect to your children. Would you? That's one of the most important, because love is one of the most important leverages that you can actually have in general.
These points, what you're raising, these are absolutely the fundamentals of having a healthy relationship, being a good father, being a good mother. Now, this is some of the stuff that we do at Muslim Father Support Forum. We mentor fathers, we coach them, we get them to realize the mistakes that they're probably making. You know, this is not an attack on sisters. Obviously the subject we're talking about here is predominantly sisters who are inflicting this upon men. But fathers, they are to blame as well for certain things. like you said, they need to spend time. Children need love. That's all they need. They need unconditional love. Now, I deal with children that have been severely traumatized. I deal with children that have been parentally alienated. All I say, the simple solution to undoing that alienation, undoing that damage, is you need to give your children love and time. That's it for a father.
And just to add to that, bro, like, do you know, a lot of men in our communities are very violent men. And that's the truth. They get physical, they can't control their irascibility and their aggression. Now, look, first of all, that's a vice. That's not a virtue to have. Okay, if you can't control yourself, you cannot control other people. Secondly, okay, if you do that, you're actually giving one of the most ultimate leverages to your wife, or then the would-be ex-wife, or whatever it may be. Because if she has proof that you've attacked the child, or she has definitive proof that you've attacked her, and if you've done it, or if they ask the children, because they bring the social services and stuff and whatever, then you've lost the case, haven't you? So people need to realize that when they get angry, remember the consequences. Simple as that, really. Because in this country and in general, to be honest, a man being angry in that manner, bro, it's not just about what you should do to protect yourself. It's what you shouldn't do as well, so that you can be protected.
Can I add to that? I mean, what we deal with, like, the problem is Muslims in the United Kingdom. Like, let's talk about the subcontinent. So Muslims from the subcontinent. Now, in our Muslim communities, men don't generally date, do they? You know, we don't date. We don't have that knowledge or experience what relationships are like. So in the non-Muslim communities, they date, they do everything. They know how to behave in relationships. Muslim men generally don't. Especially in the Asian subcontinent, you know, you get married at a young age. Now, these 21-year-olds, 20-year-olds are thrown into a marriage, usually to someone who they hardly know. Now, when they land in that marriage, no one's taught them how to behave. No one's taught them, you know, just to zip it sometimes. No one's told them, you know, to have patience, to have sabr. So this is where a lot of this anger into relationships, you know, it can be difficult, very difficult. It's not just a straightforward thing. Men generally get triggered. Men generally, what I find is they will only react when it's the last straw. That's what I see. Yes, the reaction can be very violent.
Yes, it can.
But this is the thing. So we need guidance. We need support for our youths. We need tuition. You know, what is marriage life? You know, this is how you do it. This is how you deal with your problems. But there is no one there. There's no mentoring. There's no coaching in our communities. So,
but then, just to put once again, because we need to show two sides of this. There are a lot of false allegations going out there, aren't there?
Sorry.
There are a lot of false allegations. So, a woman will say he hit me, he hit the children. I've even heard he sexually assaulted the children. He's sexually assaulted me. These kinds of things. And there are some brothers who have spoken to, I'm sure you have as well, who have actually leveraged this situation by secret recordings. So, they, for example, you know, they put a camera or something like that. I think we both know who we're talking about. And you know what I mean? And then that person would, the woman would come and say, well, you didn't do that to me. I just did this for this and that reason. And then he would present that video in the court of law, and it would save him from at least two things. Number one, from the case going up to the criminal court, which it could. And number two, it would save him from being done in the family court, potentially.
Ideally. So this is the difference. Now, if I just talk a little bit about the family court itself, the two different court systems that we have in the UK. So we've got the criminal courts and we've got the civil courts. Now, there's two different levels, burdens of proof, how they convict people.
Probability and beyond reasonable doubt.
Beyond reasonable doubt. Yeah. Now, that video you're talking about that father's made, in the criminal court, absolutely, that will vindicate him. In the family court,
it might not.
In most cases, it doesn't.
I get your point, but it could do, though, isn't it? Because I have heard of those cases where the man has, with family courts, you have more experience than me, but I have actually seen they accept that kind of submission. Yeah. So if you do have, for example, WhatsApp calls, WhatsApp messages and stuff like that, a lot of people get caught here. You know, this number is associated with this person, these videos associated with this, but we can tell, they connect the dots like that. Because what it is that if you're living with a cantankerous woman, or a woman that's malicious, or that at least she has the potential in your estimation to be malicious, I'm sorry to say, but you're going to have to start collecting data about her. Absolutely. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, well, this is what the women do. So
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
So do they do that, yeah?
They build a record.
So
when a woman wants out from the marriage,
they're advised by their divorcee friends.
Yes.
They're advised by even lawyers, solicitors. They will proactively talk to women, and they'll have their own gatherings, and they really weaponize women against each other. So the number one thing, if you're married, don't let your wife socialize and have friends with these kinds of divorced women.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
It's extremely dangerous, because if she doesn't even have the idea of divorcing you or going down this path of separation, oftentimes divorced women, misery loves company, right? They'll try to egg her on and push her and prod her to actually pursue this kind of action against the husband. Many families have been broken up because of these conniving women or malicious, as you mentioned. So it's very shocking. And what is the counterbalance to that? So I'm so happy that we have this forum that can counterbalance it through education, through legal advice, through counseling. So it seems very robust, mashallah.
Yeah, and the point you made about the WhatsApp stuff, which means be careful what you send as well.
Absolutely.
Be careful what you say. And if she's very, very malicious, if you say things which could, because you don't know, she could be recording you.
I mean, but look at the situation that's created by this. Like, husband and wife proactively spying on each other and like recording. Like, this is the situation that we have to deal with because of such a corrupt man-made system.
Exactly.
SubhanAllah. So can even marriage exist? Like, I think this is
it's true.
and we're going to talk about it. We have this panel discussion, inshallah, hosted also by MFSF, or sorry,
MFSF.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about this attack on the family and how the liberal system does not want us to have strong marriages and strong families. We're supposed to be atomized individuals, completely dependent on the centralized state. So the family system is actually a target of destruction, and these laws, and actually it's explicit by the feminist philosophers and activists starting from the beginning of the Enlightenment, that religion is really promoted by family. So how do we destroy family in order to promote the secular enlightenment? We have to destroy the family. And then the sexual revolution, obviously, attacking heterosexuality, attacking patriarchy. We have to dissolve these institutions. So that's been happening for generations, for over 2 centuries. And they're accomplishing their goals. They are effectively making it illegal to be married and to have a family. Even rape accusations, like marital rape. You could be 10 years you were divorced, and then she takes you to court because she said 10 years ago when we were married, you forced yourself on me that night. And that could potentially be effective. No evidence, no recording, no nothing. Just on the basis of her hearsay. And there will be plenty of psychologists that will testify on her behalf. And this is exactly what happened with Harvey Weinstein, that film mogul in Hollywood. It was women who were accusing him of this kind of coercion, and his lawyers were showing, look, this was completely consensual. Like, after the alleged incident of coercion, of rape, we were texting, we were going out, we were going to parties. So what was the rape? It was like, no. At that one moment, I didn't want it. And you still, because of your position of power, I felt coerced in doing it. Therefore, this counts as rape. He was convicted. He was convicted on purely that basis. So this makes it fair game. There's a precedent legally for wives to do this against their husband. So what does that mean? It means marriage is impossible. Why would you even get into any kind of relationship with a woman, married or otherwise, if she can accuse you of rape at any time without any evidence, just her testimony, and you can be in prison for that?
Do you know there is something called, sorry, you're going to say something. Do you want to say something?
I was just going to say, that scenario that you've just painted there, that's especially ideal for the Muslim marriage, because obviously the stereotypes out there that a woman cannot refuse her husband. I see that getting played out in court.
Really?
Just literally 2 weeks ago, a father had a finding made of rape in the marriage. Throughout the marriage, he was raping his wife. So that's what I mean. In our Muslim community, we get it the worst. The Muslim fathers get it the worst. This is what I mean. These are the examples now playing out. Marital rape is one of the trends that you mentioned. That's one of the trends that is going on now. So I see that very often now. Marital rape. I was raped throughout the marriage, and it's so easy for the judge, because the man's a Muslim, because he falls into the stereotype, because Islam says that's what they think.
Very upsetting, bro.
So look, the judge has to decide, on the balance of probability.
Yep.
So her just admitting it on a video recording or audio recording might not be enough in the family court. In the civil court, yes.
Let's also clarify that we're not
criminal court
advocating like beating your wife and like taking advantage of. We're not advocating that.
No, of course not.
The situation
Yeah, sure.
is that the very idea that a woman has the responsibility to make herself, accessible for intimacy, that in itself is considered to be rape as a concept. And some of the feminist authors, like Andrea Dworkin,
Yes, I've come across.
hideous woman, said that the very idea of patriarchy and a man marrying a woman is itself rape inherently, because men are in a position of power. No woman can consent when you have a patriarchy. Therefore, any type of relationship that a woman seemingly accepts, is not informed consent. It's not meaningful consent. It should be considered to be rape, actually. But the thing is that it doesn't really make sense even from a secular basis. Like, if, you didn't get my explicit consent and you touched me, this counts as marital rape. So why can't you extend that and say, you maritally catcalled me? You gave me a compliment and I was not comfortable with that. You catcalled me in marriage. You touched me, and so that's sexual harassment, marital sexual harassment.
Yes.
Like all of these things, if you don't have explicit consent, then that should be considered. Why can't they prosecute on that basis? I think eventually feminists will start saying that within a marriage. He touched me, he said something sexually provocative to me, he harassed me in my own marriage. I think the feminists would love to have that kind of ammo to go into family court or to go into some of these cases with that.
They have it already. It's happening.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
But it
it's
doesn't make sense, because why can't the man say, okay, well, you trespassed. This is my house, and you walked in the door of our apartment. My name is on the lease. My name is on the title. So you have maritally trespassed. This is a violation.
In the United Kingdom, it's probably going to be a council property anyway. Property of the government. It's not yours. It's Rasheed's.
Yeah. So subhanallah. So this is an incoherent secular system, and so just want to get that disclaimer. Otherwise, because you're talking about
okay, with that, guys, I think we're in a good place to probably end the discussion now, unless there's something that you want to talk about before we do.
I just want to say, look, if you're a Muslim father who's going through divorce, separation, going through the family court systems, I just want you brothers to know you're not alone. There is someone now there for you. Muslim Father Support Forum are here. We've been around for 3 years. We are helping hundreds and sometimes thousands. We've literally helped thousands of brothers, and we've got child access back to fathers, hundreds of them. So we are very good at what we do, and I want to maybe show off a little bit here.
Yes.
We have a high success rate.
Really?
Don't feed into the system. Don't go to these solicitors and barristers that will just fleece you for your money. I could go on, and inshallah tomorrow we will give more insight into that, into the legal system and practices. But I just want to say you're not alone, because when I went through this, I was alone. When Brother Ahmed went through it, he was alone. You're not alone anymore. We are here. So inshallah, come to us and we'll do everything we can, because we know what you're feeling. We're not just there. You're not just a file on our table. We know what you're going through, and we understand the pain, and we will help you and do whatever we can to assist. So
Excellent.
inshallah, come to us.
Daniel, any final remarks?
No, barakallahu feekum. Really enjoyed the discussion. I'm so thrilled and happy to hear about the high success rate that you all enjoy. But I really loved the hadith and the ayat that Brother Mohammed mentioned at the beginning. We need to really emphasize the evil nature of using this court system to inflict punishment and harm. And this is dhulm. It's at the minimum, it's dhulm. It can reach nifaq, it can reach kufr.
Yeah.
So what you said was really golden at the beginning, and we have to revive, this understanding, because usually when it comes to ties of kinship and breaking the ties of kinship, I'll be honest, I didn't think about it in that way as what you're describing. So that is, I think, very critical. If we have more of the shuyukh and imams who are teaching this on the minbar, and spreading awareness of this, and we create a kind of shame culture out of it. Shame is a
100%.
necessary part of Islam.
1,000,000%, yeah.
We have to change the attitude of the religious
It's
Muslim
like nahi an
community.
munkar. Effectively, that's all you're doing. It's
Exactly.
something, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." The hadith says that whoever sees an evil deed, change it with your hand. So if it's a woman out there, and I've made this point before, but if there's a woman out there, she knows one of her best friends is effectively withholding her kids from her, like the ex-husband or whatever it may be, and the father of their children, and she's not saying a word, then she's a coward. That's what she has to live with herself, knowing that she's a coward. If there's a mother out there and her daughter is doing that, then she's a coward. Whoever's living, I'm not saying you have to mention it all the time, but at least have a strong stance on it.
A lot of them, they don't even feel it in their heart. They don't see that this is injustice, so they don't even have the weakest level of iman.
Yes, they don't.
So what does that tell you?
They would feel it if it was their son.
Man.
That's when they would feel it. It's a very selfish kind of mindset here, bro. With that, though, we will conclude, and I hope you benefit from this. I certainly have, and we'll be doing more of these kind of things together, talking about these very important issues. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.